Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so if you housekeeping arrangements, fire alarm arrangements, if there's a continuous alarm sounding at any point in the meeting, proceed out the doors and back towards reception, leave the building and congregate outside the Great Hall. I'm told that toilet facilities are available nearby. This room is fitted with an infrared hearing loop, which is permanently switched on. You will need either a neck loop or, if you use a hearing aid or headphones for amplified sound, both are available on request at reception. Filming and broadcasting. The press and members of the public are permitted to film and broadcast the public sessions of this meeting. By entering and remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and recorded, and to the possible use of those images and recording for broadcasting purposes. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room while the meeting is taking place, so must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted anywhere else in the building at any time. So let's move on to item 1, apologies for absence. Our chair, Councillor Lucioni. We have Councillor David Podger in lieu of Councillor Gregori. And we have apologies from Councillor Ashwell, Councillor Minahan, Councillor Craig, Councillor Williams and Councillor Oliver. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations to make? No. Okay. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting from the 31st of January 2025. You've all had these. Can we confirm the meeting minutes as a correct record? Thank you. There are no questions or deputations, so let's move on to item 5, Chair's announcements. I'd like to remind members to please ensure that devices are on silence and to please not engage in private conversations whilst the meeting is taking place. Thank you. Moving swiftly to item 6, Police and Crime Commissioner's announcements. Donna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, panel. Nice to see you all. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the panel for moving the meetings to a Monday, which massively helps my team and I, so we are very, very grateful. So on to my announcements. There aren't a huge number of them because I saw you in January anyway for the budget meeting and I did give you my announcements at that point, but I'm just going to quickly canter through what has been sent to you already in terms of my announcements so that if you do have any questions, obviously please feel free to put them to me. So in February, the beginning of February, it was the first anniversary of the victim care hubs that I've opened across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. You will recall that there is one in each of the big police investigation centres, so Basingstoke, Southampton, Portsmouth and also on the Isle of Wight. And this is where I'm paying the victim care service. It's almost £1 million a year contract and they are sitting in with our detectives, sitting alongside the police staff who are the victim care unit. So the victim care unit look after people post-charge and the pre-charge is being done by the contract that I have through the victim care service. This is a £970,000 a year contract and it's money that's ring-fenced from the MOJ, so I must spend it on giving access to anyone who is a victim of crime or who reports an incident, and in fact you can access that service even if you don't wish to make a crime report if you've been a victim of crime. So the reason that I open victim care hubs was to improve obviously the service to victims of crime. I also have the IDVAs, the Independent Domestic Violence Advocates, the Independent Sexual Violence Advocates, the ISVAs, and I have other people who are working on other contracts I commission, such as restorative justice and those sorts of specialists sitting with the victim care hub staff as well in the 4 different main custody areas across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And we were getting, if you recall, those of you that have been on the panel for a few years, Councillor Bound, you'll recall this, over 35,000 calls were going into the 101 just saying, can you give me a crime update each year? So this is really about shunting the demand away from the 101 to a more specialist area. So anyway, we celebrated the the 12-month anniversary of the victim care hubs being open. We're one of only a third of forces in the country have these dedicated hubs, and they're working really, really well. And they did identify over 74,000 victims who needed support over that year. So I'm really, really pleased. And I had the Independent Victims Commissioner came down to celebrate that with us as well. I visited the King's Trust construction programme in Portsmouth. This has been funded through the Violent Reduction Unit, which is a unit that sits in my office. It's a Home Office funded programme. And this is what was formerly the Prince's Trust and now called the King's Trust, because the Prince is now the King. It was actually piloted and developed by Southampton City Council. It's an excellent programme. And I have then decided to take on the work that Southampton City Council were doing and rolling that out to Portsmouth. We've got another one running in the next few weeks in Southampton again. And there'll be one each quarter going between the two cities for the whole of the year. This is really about the police working with the youth justice team, so the youth equivalent of probation, to identify the highest risk offenders in our communities that are under the age of 25. So mostly the people who are on these courses, they've all been male so far, and they are 16, 17, 18, 19 years of age. A lot of them have been in and out of Feltham already, and we are trying to show them an alternative way of life when they think the only way they've got to obtain money is through criminality. So we put them through their health and safety certificate training courses to get them their SCS certificates. They can work on building sites. We then get them interviews working into the construction industry. We've also got Network Rail that are on board who are offering to train them up to work on the railways as well. And so we also have mentors in there working with them for this. It's a very intensive week, and it's very intensive on the care staff at the City Council and also on the youth justice teams, because these young people are not people that you can say you need to be here at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're going to turn up. There's lots of hand-holding, phoning, driving, physically picking them up, and my team have done a brilliant job of physically going and doing some of that stuff as well to get them there and get them to the courses each day. And of course, you can't just put all of your high risk, 6 or 7 of your high risk young people in Portsmouth or Southampton together in a room, because a lot of them have got issues with each other as well, as you will understand. So it's a very complex piece of work, but the outcomes are fantastic. And what we have seen is that 65% of those that have done courses 1 and 2, roughly around 6%, have gone into employment, with the last couple just waiting. And we think at some point they will go into employment. And the reduction in reoffending is over 80%, which has been amazing. I visited Pencroft Farm, which is right up on the Surrey-Hampshire border. So it's a farm up in Farnborough, to speak to local farmers around their concerns of burglary, hare coursing. I mean, the hare coursing season felt like it never ended this year, I have to be honest, or I should say the previous year. And those that are really being affected by rural crime. The NFU have estimated the cost of rural crime each year to the UK is over £52 million. And I've been liaising very, very closely and working with Assistant Chief Constable Tara McGovern, who is our new, she's been in post for coming up a year now, lead for local policing, which encompasses all of the Country Watch and rural crime teams. And she's redesigning the way the teams work. We're getting a lot more specialist equipment going into for the rural crime teams, including some ANPR technology, wider use of disc. The area cars are already back that you know of, more police officers going into those teams as well, thermal imaging and other bits and pieces that I'm looking to invest in and that Tara is currently investigating. So rural crime is growing in its frequency and its severity, and we really, and the force is getting itself really, really match fit to make sure that we can continue to apprehend some of the good work and some of the dangerous people that they have done. On the 11th of February was Safer Internet Day, and so this was an opportunity for me to reinforce to parents and schools and tech companies supporting us about protecting children, particularly online. Data from the Office of National Statistics shows that to the year ending March 23, 35% of children aged 10 to 15 accepted friend requests from strangers, and 8.5% shared their location publicly. Lots more education, I think, required for parents, and the key way for me to do that through my cyber ambassadors is clearly through schools, because it's a captive audience. The initiative is also the work that's been done through my cyber ambassador scheme has also been has inspired a program run by the National Cyber Security Centre, which is called Cyber First, if anyone wants to look it up. The members of my Police and Crime Commissioner Youth Commission presented their recommendations at their annual Youth Commission conference. It was here in this room actually a few weeks ago. And this is really an opportunity for young people to meet, to celebrate the work they've done over the year, but also to shape and inform me, Kate, and the team at the OPCC on what they think the biggest risks are and the concerns are to young people. And this again is ages 14 to 24. There is a big survey they carry out each year. They go and engage with lots of different youth groups, and it was attended again by Assistant Chief Constable Tara McGovern and also the High Sheriff of Hampshire, John Whitaker. I led a topping out ceremony about 3 weeks ago for the midway point of the construction of the new Petersfield police station. So you'll be aware that the renovations of the former Barclays Bank are underway, and we're looking at an opening date in June, and I will keep you all posted on that when we have the final hand back from the construction company. But that's all on track and it's going very well, and that will have a front counter open 6 days a week, really offering the public in that part of the county, because otherwise you're going either between Basingstoke and Havant if you want to go into a police station, or if you have court or police reporting conditions. So Petersfield is an important geographical police station as well for the force. I hosted the Isle of Wight's first multi-agency stalking conference, which brought together police, probation, healthcare experts, prison staff, victim services and the prosecution service, and that was held just a couple of weeks ago. We know that stalking is a deeply complex crime, and there are different types of stalking, well, typologies, and they need different responses. And I have to say, I think that we've got some brilliant health professionals working in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight who are really leading the way nationally as well on some of this. The multi-agency stalking contract that I have, which is done with health and probation, is probably one of the largest and most comprehensive in the country. So we've been given national recognition for that as well, and it's been running now for about 18 months. In response to the government's ambition for the new police and crime bill, I've welcomed tougher laws on antisocial behaviour, knife crime, and particularly violence against women and girls, which I know is something that you want us to cover, which Karen will do later this morning. I stressed again in the media and more locally, nationally and locally, that legislation alone is not going to solve these challenges, but we have got a significant number of issues arising from the criminal justice system and some of the ways that it's just not working to support victims at the moment. And perhaps if you want me to go into that in more detail, I will through questions in due course. The new legislation does also cover funding for mental health services for people in crisis and additional youth diversion schemes, which again is very welcome. And, you know, I think if you look at the amount of time, effort and resource going in from police forces up and down the country in dealing with crimes related to significant breakdown of mental health, poor mental health, you know, it's astonishing. So for me, this is a drum that I keep beating. I welcomed I did a joint visit with Councillor Christy Lambert from Southampton. We did a walk around together in Southampton with the City Centre Policing Unit, and this is really about tackling shop theft, street crime, street drug taking, dealing, antisocial behaviour, and we had a comprehensive walk around with the CCU, the City Centre Policing Unit, and we launched it in November 2003. So it was the first one in the county that got set up, and it is working working really, really well. They've recorded 118% increase in retail crime charges. So the outcomes now for people who are shoplifting is going in the right direction. We are seeing a much improved position there, and as a consequence, we're having more shoplifting offences reported because retailers are now seeing the action coming. There's a much greater use as well of civil orders like community behavioural orders, CBOs, to really protect high streets and prevent individuals from being in certain locations with other people or carrying out certain behaviours, which is great. And we did also get recognition from the British Retail Consortium for the significant focus we've had over the last year. Moving on to March then, I announced a new funding network, and this is ahead of my new £1.1 million community grants round, which is opening on the 1st of April. Feedback that we've had from yourselves, from members of Parliament, from community groups, and those that are not formal charities, but just groups that are coming together, like community speedwatch groups, for example, is that they would like some more training on how to fill out the forms, what we're looking for, how we score them. So setting up the funding network has been key to making sure that organisations that are not filling out grant application forms every day are aware of what we're looking for, how it's done, etc. And we've run, I think, 2 or 3 of those training sessions online, which have been well attended. To mark International Women's Day, I participated in an event at the Portsmouth Marriott last week, run by one of our local tech entrepreneurs, alongside a para-Olympian and people working within violence against women and girls, particularly supporting the girls. It's an organisation called the Girls Network, and it was all about sort of inspiring young people to be involved and to, in whatever industry they may be in, to reach their full potential. As part of No More Week, which was last week, I shone a spotlight on domestic abuse and sexual violence, which, as we know, affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men globally. And I also took the opportunity to promote the Safer Together Hampshire website, which was launched last year in conjunction with Portsmouth City Council. If you haven't had a look at it, I'd encourage you to have a look. It's a really good website with a whole load of information on it, particularly focusing on domestic abuse and sexual violence for people living across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Last couple of bits then, I responded to the Victims Commissioner for England and Wales, her report last week, which was published, which called for a collective effort to reduce the backlog in the court system and to ensure offenders don't end up walking free. We are seeing that happening at the moment. Whilst nationally the Ministry of Justice's decision to fund an additional 2,500 sitting days is a positive step, that there are 5,888 sitting days that the Lady Chief Justice has been given by the Lord Chancellor for this coming year, which is the highest number we've ever had in England and Wales. But there are significant contributing factors, such as the lack of legal advocates, legal advisors, as they're called, particularly in the Magistrates' Court, and HMCTS struggling with funding and the knock-on effect that's having on the prison overcrowding system, because people are spending much longer on remand because they can't get the trials done quick enough, and it's the remand male prison population that is bursting at the seams. Complex cases like serious sexual offences, organised crime, this means that quite often we are having some quite serious criminals who are in our communities for longer than they should be, which then means they're able to commit more crime, which then just perpetuates the whole cycle. And finally, last Friday on March the 7th, I held my 4th annual Police and Crime Commissioner Awards, and a huge thank you to everyone who was involved, in particular my brilliant comms team who set it up, but the police officers, the police staff members, the volunteers, the partners, the local authorities, and the community groups. Over 200 people attended, over 100 people were nominated, and we gave out 15 accolades on the night. So it was a lovely way to say thank you to those who give so much to make our community safe. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. As always, a really detailed, comprehensive overview. Thank you, Donna. So, members, you all have seen the announcements in the pre-reads earlier. Before I ask if there's any questions, actually, let me just comment on the Victim Core Hub. Many congratulations. I think sitting alongside the police staff is really, really key, and I think, and I know from experience, that will really help and improve victim care, and I do hope that others follow your lead. So, members, any questions? Councillor Robinson.
Good morning, Donna. Just one thing for me. I mean, what you're doing is without a doubt, it's really good stuff. But I just wondered in relation to knife crime and shoplifting, which I know it's something that, you know, you really are trying to tackle. But if I wonder what the effect that the widespread media news, whatever news about low prison places is actually having on crimes such as those. Do you feel that, you know, that there is, you know, a thought by perpetrators that actually there won't really be any meaningful consequences for their actions? You know, we discussed before, you know, it's cause and effect, isn't it? And often consequences, you know, are very important to make sure that people are law-abiding citizens.
Thank you very much. I have to be completely honest with you. Is it having an effect on criminals and their approach towards being caught? Yes, 100% it is. I'm sure of that. Let's not forget that at the moment, for the vast majority of offences that you'd be sent to prison for, you are entitled to be considered for parole at 50% of the way through your sentence. As I say, it's not all, but that's the vast majority, the volume people that we see in prison. That then got reduced down to 40% of the way through your sentence with SDS 40 when that happened last year, twice, and we had 3,800 people released from prison earlier than expected. The Lord Chancellor Shabana Mahmood appointed David Gauke, the former Lord Chancellor, to carry out a review of this sentencing and a whole review of the way that courts work as well. That is currently underway, and I have made representation into him, which I did update the panel on in January. Now, they are looking at ways of effectively keeping people out of prison when they've been convicted, where they would normally have otherwise passed the custody threshold. I had a letter from our lead probation director for what we call South Central, which is the area we are, last week. I was reading it yesterday, and there are going to be a lot more people who are going to be released from prison even earlier with tags on, and yes, that is an imposition to them, but I do think quite a lot of them will see it as a let off, for want of a better word, and I think there is a lot more of this to come. The prisons that are being built are still not open. So there were two of them that we do in the northeast of the country, due to come online October, November. As far as I'm aware, they're still not open yet. So there's obviously been issues. That was due to create another 600 or 700 prison beds in the male prison population. So yes, I do think that there is an approach now to, even if you get caught and convicted, you're not necessarily going to go to prison for things that otherwise you would have done.
Thank you, Donna. Councillor Cartwright.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Donna, for I can see you're as busy as ever, and that's so well done for that. My question really was, you talked about the new policing and crime bill in your announcements, and it talks there that it includes funding mental health services to support people in crisis. I always have a slight worry when it comes to funding mental health, because it seems we seem to invest a lot of money in it with very little return. So are you happy that, you know, that this will work okay?
Well, there is the question, the $1 million question. I don't want to be negative, but going on past experience, I would imagine it will have an effect, but it could be a more positive effect if it was managed in a different way. I mean, the key thing here is that if people are not going to prison, and this is the point that I've made into the National Review as well, if fewer people are going to go to prison, we need to make sure that those that are then being punished or rehabilitated in the community, it is meaningful. And at the moment, the probation service, there just are nowhere near enough probation officers to manage the risk and the complexity and the rehabilitative element and the punitive and everything else that needs to go along with it. They don't have enough programs to put them onto, so they call them activity days. So if you're convicted of a really nasty, I don't know, ABH, and it's your fourth or fifth offence, and normally you might go to prison for that, and you do end up getting an order. It could be a suspended sentence with a community order running alongside it. There could be some activity days, so it could be what we might used to have called an enhanced thinking course, or whatever. But for most people, we know that drugs and alcohol or poor mental health will be linked to their offending. So they do have activity days for drug and alcohol rehabilitative programs. The mental health stuff is where we need the greater investment and funding. But really, investing it through the probation service, yes, it needs to happen, but it's much better if it's funded properly, not through probation. Like, yes, you need the probation bit too, but we need more funding going into the pre-bit, because prevention's better than cure. So let's stop these people from taking cocaine, MDMA, marijuana, whatever it is they're taking regularly to self-medicate, because they've got so many complex issues going on in their lives that drugs are a way to escape for a period of time. Because that's when, particularly with cocaine, people become quite aggressive, very violent. We know that 85% of our people coming into custody for domestic abuse, domestic violence related offences, as you know from the drug testing on arrest and the updates I've given you previously, the DTOA, the drug testing on arrest, is a programme that I fund throughout all of our custody centres in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and 85% of those that are being tested when they come in for DA related offences are testing positive for cocaine. So, you know, there is a direct correlation here. So if we could front load the mental health support, then, you know, through GPs, through community health, through the ICP, for example, we would be able to help and prevent, and then not have as much onus on the police, probation and the courts, which for me would be the much better thing.
Thank you, Donna. Councillor McKay.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand when we might expect to see a police front counter in Basingstoke town centre. As I'm sure you're aware, the current front counter is at the Pick, which is on an industrial estate some considerable way from the town centre. Thank you.
Yes, that location is not ideal on an industrial estate, and that was a decision taken clearly before my time, and it was certainly not where I would put one. I would put one in your town centre, as you have just said. Kate and I met with your leader and your chief executive at Basingstoke Council beginning of January, and whilst we were there, you know, Paul really sort of indicated about the building dead opposite, which is obviously where the police are based, which shared with health. I can't remember the name of the building now. Can you remember the name of it? You know the building I mean, don't you? Sorry, Parklands, that's it, Parklands, yes. And as you know, we've got lots of police vehicles there, DPT, our 999 responders, our neighbourhoods, and we've actually got another team there as well. So we went over and had a look, because the council had indicated, as the freeholder of the building, that as you walk in, where health are in on to the right in the corner, that the bit on the left is vacant, so that perhaps we could look to put a front counter there. So we went in there and had a look, and I was very happy to look at investigating that. Came back, spoke to my estates team, who then went and did a visit and reached out to health, who've got the head lease on it. So we sublet like a floor, effectively, or half a floor, and health have basically said that no, that space in on the left is not suitable and appropriate, and so that would be where I would love us to have a front counter, which is also then adjacent to the council, which I think would be really good too. That hasn't materialised. Parklands actually works for us quite well, and because we've got the Pick as well, so Basingstoke has got an awful lot of police resource in it. It just needs to be a bit more prominent so that people are aware, because that's clearly the issue. So yes, we are willing to work with you and speak to you offline, because, you know, I would really like to have a front counter in Basingstoke that's not just the one at the Pick. We need something that's more accessible.
If it would be possible for the council to receive some sort of specification to understand exactly what the police requirement is, we'd be very happy to try and work together to locate somewhere.
Yes, we can get that sent over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Podger.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you for the update. With regards to the Petersfield police station, the residents eagerly await the opening, and we're pleased to see you recently in Petersfield promoting that. I have a question about rural crime. I know that you visited Pencroft Farm in Farnham recently. One of the features of rural crime, which is obviously known to you and the force, is the fact that very often it is part of organised crime as well, and also needs intelligence which is cross-border, particularly thinking from my perspective in East Hampshire, West Sussex or Sussex Police, and also Surrey. I wonder if you can tell us what actions are currently being taken in order to coordinate rural crime across the wider policing area. We know in Hampshire that certainly where I am, people are coming across from West Sussex, and we really need a joined up approach to be able to identify the culprits and help to stop the criminal offences.
Thank you very much. It's a really good point, actually, and we have seen over the last 18 months, probably actually a bit longer than that, maybe even 2 years, some shift of organised criminality in rural communities because of a robust response from Thames Valley Police, which has shunted some south. Surrey and Sussex, particularly Sussex, obviously big communities there, lots of rural as well. I think they've been in a roughly similar position to we have, so it is happening cross-border, but I think the Thames Valley teams have been very good, and that has sent some criminals south of the border. So what are we doing? So through Tara McGovern, our Assistant Chief Constable, she meets with her equivalents in all of our neighbouring forces. We have held one meeting cross-border with MPs and the sort of chief superintendents working that area, which Tara and I both went to as well, to look at that cross-border sharing. The model that Thames Valley Police have adopted, we are now getting the Thames Valley rural crime policing experts. It's already started. They are training and working with our Hampshire Country Watch team and others to really gem them up and get them all the tactics, all the bits they've learned best, when to do it, how to do it, what time of the day, what vehicles to be in, what tyres to use, blah, 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 the complexity of some of these things. So we're working with them to work out and learn best practice already. There's also now, it's been running for about 10, 11 months, a Southeast Rural Crime Network, which I sit on, and so does Tara. And that was chaired initially by Joe Shiner, the Chief Constable in Sussex. And so Surrey, Thames Valley, Hampshire, Sussex. Did I miss one out? Surrey, Thames Valley, Hampshire. We all sit on that one together. We've got a separate partnership with Wiltshire Dorset on the other side, but there is one that is the Southeast, because those forces work together on counter-terrorism and a whole load of other things as well. And I'm also Vice Chair of the National Rural Crime Network. So where we've got initiatives coming through the MPCC, the National Police Chiefs Council, through the Home Office, any pots of money or initiatives that we can be involved in, that's why I put myself onto the National Rural Crime Network, so that I can be really focusing. This is a key area in my police and crime plan, as you know, so I need to be making sure that I'm spending, a decent proportion of my time focusing on all of this. Clearly working with the NFU as well, around what they're picking up, what their members are telling them, and also NFU Mutual in terms of the insurance company. I meet with them regularly as well, because they are a great source of information for us on where things are going wrong and where more needs to be done. Ultimately, with the cross-border policing and the management of that, it is about intelligence, which you referred to. And I funded 2 posts working in our intelligence unit, police intelligence unit, who are just focusing on information coming in around rural OCGs, organised crime gangs, and rural crimes. And we've also got, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2, definitely 1 analyst that's then breaking down information that the intelligence officers are picking up, and again working with NFU Mutual and NFU around where we are mapping the ebbs and flows of what's going on. So there is a lot happening, and there are some specialists. Tara's had some investments signed off by me and the Chief Constable, where she is going to be standing up very specialist operations, probably 4 or 5 times over the next year, where she'll have a whole load of officers, public order, etc., on overtime to go in and really intercept where needed, where we've got particular issues. So, yeah.
Thank you, Donna. Members, are there any other questions in relation to the Police and Crime Commissioner's announcement?
I don't think it covers announcements. Basically, thank you, Donna, for such a comprehensive update. Yesterday, Councillor Hunt and I set up our world-famous gazebo in North End. Obviously, people were invited to come and complain, moan at us about things. One issue which was raised quite a number of times by a number of people was the menace of e-scooters. I know you addressed us last time on initiatives to take this menace off the street. Can you just give us an update on how it's going, how many have been taken, and whether it's going to continue? Because it was quite ironic, whilst we were talking, there were e-scooters and e-bikes whizzing up and down the road over the pavement, making a complete mayhem.
It's the ongoing battle, Councillor Adair. I mean, honestly, it really is. What I would say is if you do have any more people approach you about it, if you get them to have a look on my Facebook page or on my office one or on the Force one, but probably my office or my one is better, and it's called Operation Crush. I posted the video it's about 4 or 5 videos back if you scroll down on my page, and it's all about seizing electric scooters and those electric, not a normal electric pedal bike, but the electric motorbikes that have the big thick rubber wheels. They are so expensive, those bikes. They're nearly £5,000, and the police have said to me that almost exclusively they are connected to criminality, because you can get a bike that will get you from A to B that's doesn't look as menacing and isn't as quick. So because of the cost and the agility of them for criminals, it's pretty much an exclusive market. There's very few people that are riding them that are not doing something wrong, is what I'm being told. Now, the policy towards electric scooters at the moment is that they are being crushed, seized, etc., where they're linked to criminality. Now, it could be, well, you will be committing an offence if you ride a private scooter on a road without having an MOT and insurance, and it's not possible to get an MOT and insurance on them, so effectively you are committing an offence. But you could be an otherwise innocent, it could be an unintentional crime you're committing as a 15-year-old, let's say, if you've had one bought for you for your birthday. But there are lots of people, as you will know, using them to push drugs around at speed, and they can stick it over their shoulder, collapse the scooter down, get in a lift, go up, drop off, come down, and they're off again. They are the ones that are being targeted for the crushing. 112 had been crushed last year. That was as of January this year. They will have done more since January, but that's the number that I had when I did that video back in January. So in terms of then starting to apprehend otherwise innocent kids going to and from school or college, the police are supposed to be stopping, saying, do you realise you're committing an offence? Can you get off and walk with it? You're the only ones you can use are like, the voice schemes, like the official council ones, like you've got in Portsmouth, Southampton. So you shouldn't be using a private scooter. A lot more education needs to be done about this. I've, as I say, done videos. I've done several press releases over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm trying to educate as best I can. Anything you can do with your councils to support and get your council comms teams or your community safety cabinet members to be putting something out just to reiterate to parents, that's what's needed, is education. Because I do think parents would be loath to spend 450 quid on an electric scooter if they knew that they're encouraging their young person to go and commit a crime. Yeah, I think I actually think really the responsibility lies with the government, and I said this to 2 or 3 previous Secretary of States of Transport. You're creating the issue. Either change the law and make it lawful for them to use them, but make it really clear that you need to go in cycle lanes, etc., or make it clearer through a national campaign that you can't use private scooters, and then maybe Halfords will stop selling them. But, this is the problem that we've got. We're up against it because you can buy them in shops like Halfords or online. Then, of course, people don't realise they're committing a crime when they buy one for their kid.
Thank you, Donna. Any other questions on item 6, members? Thank you, Donna. So let's move to item 7 then, please.
Thank you, and I'm going to invite Karen Dawes from my office to give a presentation to the panel on the 3 areas that you've asked us for updates on.
Good morning to Police and Crime Panel members. So my presentation today will include updates against the work programme in the areas of serious violence, violence against women and girls, and commissioning. So the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan consists of 69 commitments, 38 are delivered by the Commissioner or her team, and 31 by the police, with the Commissioner holding the Chief Constable to account. The Police and Crime Plan Delivery Board is chaired by the Commissioner and meets every 6 weeks, reviewing activity against commitments of the plan. And all 69 commitments of the plan are included on this slide and the following one. As the Commissioner's second term is fairly new, all projects are open and ongoing. So updates today are aligned to the work programme covering serious violence, violence against women and girls and commissioning. Serious violence is in green as one of the Commissioner's local priorities. Violence against women and girls, or VAUG, is in blue as part of the strategic policing requirement, and commissioning is in grey as one of the Commissioner's statutory functions. So beginning with serious violence, this starts with an extract from the plan, including the narrative and commitments. And the Home Office have recently notified the Commissioner of £1.3 million to continue the public health approach to serious violence from the 1st of April this year for 12 months. The Violent Reduction Unit, or VRU, coordinates the partnership response to serious violence through the Violent Reduction Partnership, which is chaired by the Commissioner. This includes 25 partners, including police, local authorities, the Integrated Care Board, Probation, Youth Justice Service, Fire and Education. And they must produce a strategic needs assessment, which is an analysis of serious violence, and then they use that to produce a strategy. By March 2026, all violent reduction partnerships have to establish a Young Futures Prevention Partnership to focus on 8 to 17-year-olds who display risk-indicating behaviour and increased vulnerability, and who are not visible to or supported by statutory services. So there are 4 strategic objectives of the Violent Reduction Partnership Response Strategy. These are a multi-agency and systems change, and that's where partners identify risky people and problem solve. Data and analysis, which supports the serious violence duty, and this requires local authorities, police, fire, criminal justice and health to work together to identify the causes of serious violence and prepare and implement a shared strategy. To facilitate this, the Violent Reduction Unit have supported a new partnership data sharing platform called Hampshire and Isle of Wight Together, which automates the sharing of only necessary data. The third part of the strategy is engagement and communications, and this develops campaigns. Between October and December, this included antisocial behaviour and Halloween, OpSceptor, which focuses on knife crime, and Trusted Faces, which is led by Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. The fourth element of the strategy is interventions, evaluations and opportunities, and that supports a public health approach to commissioning based on evidence of what works, utilising resources including the College of Policing and the Youth Endowment Fund Toolkit. So in terms of projects and interventions to prevent and tackle serious violence with a greater focus on young people under 25, the Commissioner has also given a very detailed update about the King's Trust in her announcements. Trauma-informed practitioners, or TIPs, help the police to recognise the impact of trauma and work in a way that's founded upon the 6 principles of a trauma-informed approach. That's safety, trust, choice, collaboration, empowerment and cultural considerations. 3 TIPs support 5 police teams at Waterlooville, observing communication between police and the public and giving feedback through reflective practice. And this is evaluated by Liverpool John Moores University. Case studies are shared with the Police Learning and Development team to embed into future officer training. Accident and Emergency Navigators, A&E Navigators, are youth workers based in hospital departments, emergency departments in Basingstoke, Newport, Portsmouth, Southampton and Winchester, and they engage with 11 to 25-year-olds who present at hospital with a range of vulnerabilities. They work in a person-centred way, utilising reachable, teachable moments to engage and co-create bespoke action plans. They develop a relationship with children and young people and their families, providing support for short and long-term goals. Reset aims to reduce the risk of reoffending for young people aged 18 to 25 in Southampton, Portsmouth, Basingstoke and Newport police custody. They build trusting relationships, understand needs, goals and aspirations, and they offer flexible one-to-one and targeted support through a person-centred and strength-based approach. Of particular interest was joint working with research navigators and the police during OPSEPTA Week in November 2024, where they included targeted operations and engagement in education to reassure young people that they are safer not carrying knives. Reset navigators and police engaged with young people who have been identified as habitual knife carriers. So a few headlines here regarding serious violence. There were 5,054 fewer reports for violence against the person compared to the previous year. 2,066 fewer reports of violence with possession of weapons, for reports of violence with injury. 240 fewer robbery reports, and there are about the same number of reports regarding the possession of weapons to this time last year. In May and November 2024, there was a heightened focus on knife crime through OPSEPTA, and during this week, diversion visits were carried out, including handing habitual knife carrier packs to those known as habitual knife carriers and their parents, and that detailed possible sentences and the increased likelihood of becoming a victim if you carry a knife, and the support that's available. Surrender of knife bins are now permanently in place across most front offices. So I'll now move on to violence against women and girls, which falls within the strategic policing requirement. The strategic policing requirement relates to aspects of policing where a cross-boundary response is needed to respond to wider national threats, and VORG was added most recently in 2023. It's also worth note that the Police and Crime Bill introduced in Parliament also includes tougher enforcement action against violence against women and girls perpetrators and better protection for victims. And the Commissioner included No More Week in her announcements this morning. So in terms of a collaborative approach to tackling violence against women and girls, the Commissioner chairs a strategic partnership day which will continue to include a focus on VORG. The Strategic Partnership Day enables partners, including police, to discharge their duties regarding the duty to collaborate and the serious violence duty. I already explained the serious violence duty under the serious violence section, but the duty to collaborate is part of the Victims and Prisoners Act 2024, which requires local policing bodies, local authorities and integrated care boards to collaborate in the commissioning of domestic abuse, sexual abuse and serious violence. Duty holders must also develop a joint needs assessment and a local strategy demonstrating how they will collaborate to deliver and improve relevant victim support services. The Commissioner is also a member of the Victim Commissioner Baroness Newlove's advisory meeting. This seeks to support efforts to improve the justice system for victims of crime. And members will support Baroness Newlove on the implementation of the Victim and Prisoners Act 2024 and compliance of the Victims Code. The ambition of this Act is for victims to play a central role with enhanced rights to improve their status and experience of the justice process. So still continuing with VORG and partnership working, as mentioned in the Commissioner's announcements, the Commissioner hosted Hampshire and Isle of Wight's first stalking conference. Over 100 people attended and they heard from victims of stalking and other guest speakers. 99% of attendees would attend a similar event in future and 73% are interested in joining the Stalking Best Practice Forum. And the Commissioner gave a detailed update on her multi-agency stalking partnership in her announcements this morning. The Home Office have confirmed funding will be available for the MASP, Multi-Agency Stalking Partnership, to deliver a psychologist-led stalking intervention for 2025-2026. The following 5 slides, and I know that you've had these slides, highlight Commission services to tackle violence against women and girls and support for victims of domestic abuse, sexual crime and stalking. And these slides include the type of service, the geographical area of coverage, and any other funders in addition to the Commissioner. And you'll see that includes the local authorities, the Integrated Care Board, NHS England and probation. Under the strategic policing requirement, police must have appropriately trained officers and staff to provide an efficient response to VORG. The police adopted the DA Matters Change programme in 2017, and they've commissioned a revisit and a review from Safe Lives about how police respond to domestic abuse, and that will be completed by the spring. The Constabulary have now got 626 domestic abuse champions who support cultural change and improved understanding of domestic abuse through peer support. There's also a growing knowledge of suicide following domestic abuse, and this has been included in the police training module of driving up standards of investigation following sudden death. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary was cited as smarter practice for its approach to tackling police-perpetrated domestic abuse following a super complaint by the Centre for Women's Justice and Bureau of Investigative Journalism about the way police forces responded to domestic abuse where the suspect was a police officer or police staff. I'll now move on to the final area of today's work programme, which is commissioning. Police and crime commissioners are responsible for commissioning local services for victims, and they're well placed to do this as local victims advocates and also through oversight of how the criminal justice system is meeting the needs of victims. So through sound commissioning, the commissioner can deliver her police and crime plan through evidence-based decisions, ensuring public money is spent in an open, fair and transparent way. The commissioning budget is almost £10 million, with approximately £7 million brought into Hampshire and Isle of Wight from other sources, including the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice, and the difference between those two is contributed by the Commissioner. Funding sources from the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office, with several work streams within them, are listed on this slide. And earlier slides regarding VAUG and serious violence included examples of the Commissioner jointly funding services with different partners. And the commissioning areas to support the Police and Crime Plan to 2024 are listed here. So regarding early intervention, a young person's strategic needs assessment has been produced with district profiles to better understand needs and gaps, and that will be used to support the Commissioner's upcoming grants round. In 2024-2025, 53 grants were delivered to divert young people at a primary and a secondary level. So primary interventions seek to prevent a problem from occurring in the first place, and secondary interventions intervene early to stop issues escalating. The Safer Streets Fund was a government initiative which provided commissioners with funding to implement situational crime prevention to tackle neighbourhood crime, VAUG and antisocial behaviour in partnership with local authorities. And that included mentors, CCTV, lighting, outreach and educational programmes in schools. The Commission also supports the Youth Justice Service with funding which focused on prevention and early intervention, and that included youth crime prevention officers, data analysis and youth diversion. Drug testing on arrest is where people who test positive for heroin and or cocaine are required to undertake a drug assessment and then encouraged to continue to engage with community-based services. Priority 2 there focuses on restorative justice, which seeks to repair harm by providing an opportunity for those harmed and those who take responsibility for the harm to communicate and address their needs in the aftermath of a crime. And you can see that an exceptionally high number of victims were satisfied at 99%. Hampshire and Isle of Wight's Restorative Justice Service was highlighted as a model of good practice in the MOJ Victim Services Commissioning Guidance in terms of its innovation and collaboration with probation. And a restorative antisocial behaviour awareness course for out-of-court resolutions will launch in the spring of 2025. So moving on to priority 3, the Commissioner has already given a detailed update about her Victim Care Hub in her announcements this morning, and commissioning services for violence reduction were presented earlier under the violent reduction section. In terms of offender interventions, many of these have been included in previous slides, but other examples include integrated offender management or IOM. This includes the 4 IOM houses in Gosport, Portsmouth, Southampton and Basingstoke. The IOM houses provide intensive support for people coming out of prison who would otherwise be homeless and who are vulnerable to substance use. And in terms of the future, the Commissioner has already highlighted her new funding network to streamline the grant process in her announcements. The new Violent Reduction Navigator Service will be an expansion of RESET, which I mentioned earlier, and that will be beyond police custody, as mentioned in the serious violence section. And as also previously stated, the Home Office have now confirmed that we will receive £1.3 million to support the Violent Reduction Unit for a further year. And I explained the duty to collaborate earlier under the Violence Against Women and Girls section. So that concludes my overview today of delivery against the work programmes. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Donna, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think that was a great overview. Thank you so much, Karen, for doing that. Over to you for questions or comments.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Robinson.
When I was looking at the violence reduction partnership, so you had a number of partners there. Now, the one I didn't see, but I didn't know whether that was a part of the local authority one, was no mention of schools. I don't know whether you know, but that was my career, was in education, working in quite challenging areas. Don't ask me why, but I did. And it's really incredibly sad, actually, at the actual age that some children start to show clear signs of aggressive and controlling behaviours. And yes, without a doubt, there is a whole, sort of network of cause and effect, the cause and what it affects that. And, for my mind, we're looking to prevention. And I hate to have to say it, but, we need to be looking a lot younger. I'm talking about at the end of Key Stage 1 even, but definitely Key Stage 2, so the primary level. And I don't know whether you may well have this on your radar, Commissioner, because I know that, you are on to everything. Is there any way that this could be a focus, though? And maybe develop a partnership between the parent, the child, and a mentor, which could be a trusted school employee who, it's no good giving a stranger to a child because they'll be like, why should I listen to you? Parents often need help as well. I think people forget this. We talk about drugs and alcohol and mental health, but often we forget that for many parents, they can't cope. It's that vicious cycle of, to them, what's normal. And I have done this. So I am speaking, from experience of, guidance. I hope you don't mind if I just share one tiny little example with one of my lovely mums. And she said to me, I've tried swearing at him and that doesn't work, and it's, she was doing her absolute best, but he was out of control. And I just wonder whether there's something that we can do to focus and start, we talk about from the cradle to the grave. I hope what I've said has been of, some use maybe, and it may be something you've already got on your radar.
Thank you very much. And I know that you and I have spoken about this offline as well before, actually, and they're excellent points. And you're absolutely right that the prevention isn't when they're 13 or 14 and they're already stealing cars, stealing bikes, smoking drugs, selling drugs. It's actually way back. And actually, Karen trained me on a whole load of trauma-informed practice when I first became a police and crime commissioner. And you probably will recall me saying before that one of my causes for wanting to become a police and crime commissioner was about stopping children from becoming criminalised, those 13, 14-year-olds from getting criminal records, how we can help them. And then Karen said to me when I started speaking to her, actually, it's before that. And I said, what? So you mean like early years? And she said, actually, no, before that. It's actually when women are pregnant and that level of cortisol, adrenaline running through the mother's bloodstream into the baby, into their brain development, even in the womb before they're born. If you've got a woman living in a home with lots of domestic abuse or drug taking or the shouting, the baby can hear that in the womb, and that again increases the levels of adrenaline. And so and then babies are born with a propensity to want more adrenaline because that's what they've been used to and their brains are developed and it likes it and it wants more. So they will put themselves in more situations that are adrenaline led. And It's so complex, and this has really been quite a big theme, hasn't it, Karen, around the work that I've therefore then focused on, and all of the contractor partners. When you've got like 3 or 4 pages here of all of our ward commissioning services, everyone that we contract with formally must have a trauma-informed practice running through the work that they do for that exact reason, because prevention long term is better than cure. Reducing the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, which clearly as a teacher you all know about that. So what do we do with schools? Well, through the Violent Reduction Unit, I've used money to run programmes for Year 6 and Year 7, or 2 programmes, one for Year 6 and Year 7, which is one's called Healthy Choices, and I can't remember what the other one's called, but anyway, the Year 6 and 7s is you're about to probably get your first smartphone for the first time. Who are you talking to online? Who is it? Don't share images of yourself. Don't have your location services on. Be careful where you are, blah, blah, blah. So it's all about the risks of these things and how to balance that and have a healthy approach to being online but being safe, because that's a big risk for them at that age. Then with the years 9, 10 and 11, it's the healthy relationships, and it's about not feeling pressured to partake in sexual acts that you may not want to. It's about explaining to young people that, non-fatal strangulation is now in fact a criminal offence, and that got brought in 2021 because of the trend of young people watching this almost like an asphyxiation type thing as a sexual practice, which for a lot of people in this room, this is going to be quite alien to us. But for young people, the trends of what they're seeing online, free, they can access that kind of pornography, which is making sexual intercourse a lot more violent perhaps than otherwise, we might think is healthy for them. So there's a whole load of, and it's just about being respectful about, if you're in a relationship, it's okay for you to choose what you wear. You shouldn't be told by your boyfriend or your girlfriend what you can and can't wear, and just things like that, which to an impressionable 14, 15, 16-year-old, we need to be having those conversations with them. So I pay for organisations to go into secondary schools and do that all across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. But the long-term point you're making, and then around the mums with support, there's a couple of pilots that Motivate have run for me, which have been brilliant, particularly in Lee Park. They use the Motivate offices there in Park Parade. And it was a family support programme. So where you've got there was one particular family I met, and the mum said, it's just been so helpful. This 15-year-old, she's a single mum with 3 boys, and she had a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and then primary age. And the 11-year-old was absolutely watching what his 15-year-old brother was doing and thinking, I want to be like you. And mum was really concerned about the effect it was having on the 2 younger boys. She didn't know how to cope. She didn't know how to punish him. She just was completely out of her depth. And he was involved in quite a lot of criminality. He had already been convicted, not gone to prison at 15, but was not far away. And there was a really specific intervention that was put in place to support him separately to start with, then the other 2 boys coming in with mum into the family programme, him still separate, and then at the right point, Motivate integrated everything together. And then to sort of say to him, do you realise the effect it's having on your 2 younger brothers as well? Do you want them to end up in trouble with the police like you are, etc.? And he actually really didn't want that to happen and said, no, but that is very intensive. And yes, I did pay for that and do that, and Motivate were brilliant in what they did. I think with this one, I completely agree with what you're saying. That is what needs to happen. When things get as far as me, quite often things are already going quite wrong. So I think it's actually children's services, and I hate to push something their way because they are so stretched, as we know. But ultimately, what was that programme 10 years ago, which is the Troubled Families programme, which was funded, and it ended up funding got taken away. But I know in where I was at the time in Portsmouth, it was Bernardo's that ran that contract for us. And they would ascertain the family that needed support, those that are in absolute crisis, as in and out of Feltham already, exploitation, sexual, violent, drugs, knife crime, etc. Those where being arrested but haven't quite got to Feltham, your category 5s are your worst, your 4s. Your 3s are those kind of, you're on the radar, we keep pulling you over, we've stopped and searched you, we found you with marijuana, we found you with a bladed instrument. 2s, not going to school, bit chaotic. Your number 1s would be the families that we want everyone to be. So they were trying to do categories 2, 3 and 4 all together. And I said, stop, focus on your 4s, get those sorted out, then work on your 3s, then work on your 2s, because they were spreading themselves too thinly. It was crisis management effectively, but I think through children's services, that's where we're best placed, because then less of those children will even become on the radar. People like me, the police, the youth justice service. But you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I'm happy to take it offline with any members of the panel, any elected person that represents particularly the authorities that have got children's services. But actually the CSPs have got a part to play in the districts here as well. They're crucial with that intelligence sharing, gathering, interventions, what works, how to divert away over the summer holidays. It's so complex. There is so much more that needs to be done. And I'm really happy to support and work with anyone that I need to. But you're absolutely right in what you're saying.
Thank you, Donna. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Look, just talking about the schools and certainly in Lee Park, I just want to share with you parts of an email I got from the Chris Anders, the head of Park Community School, Chris Anders. This was in response to a violent attack on 2 children. I must say that the parents of the children involved have been very grateful for the school's support and actions, but the last part of it says violence in schools, and I expect in the community, is worse than it was pre-COVID. And the schools recognise that seemed to be the point of change. And from the school's point of view, I think we can do what we can do to promote good behaviours, but some children are violent. Sometimes their parents are just as shocked by their behaviour as we are. And other times it will be a learned behaviour. And colleagues in primary schools see more than that than they used to. So, beyond suspension, of course, there's little that the schools can do. So you're exactly right, Gwen.
And what you've got there in Chris Anders is quite possibly one of the most outstanding, inspirational, think outside of the box head teachers that I've come across. I think he's absolutely brilliant in a very tough area, but doing some really outstanding things to try and give that holistic life skills as well as an education. Yeah, he's absolutely right though. The levels of violence in schools is something like I've never known before. I certainly think young people are becoming emboldened. Their approach towards carrying a knife, for some young people in some communities, they're seeing it as almost a commonplace thing to do now. If I had £1 for every time I'd heard, well, cannabis isn't really illegal, is it? It's like, it's socially accepted. No, it's not. It's completely illegal. But it's like normalizing abnormal behavior. And the more you talk about it, the more you do it, the more you think it's okay, because it becomes your norm. What's interesting is when you talk about marijuana being not for everybody, but how it's a gateway drug. And I've had the wrath of some people who've said to me, that's you're demonizing people, that's not true. And I said, well, you show me a heroin addict or a crack cocaine addict that didn't start off smoking marijuana, because they all do. It may have been when they were much younger, but there is a path and there is a pattern. I'm very anti-marijuana. So, I'm certainly not of the ilk of the declassification. Having said that, if it was declassified, the VAT that came off the back of it would be great going into mental health, but that's a separate issue.
Thank you, Donna. Members, any other questions? Councillor.
One question, the very vexed question of stop and search in respect of violent crime reduction. I am very, very aware that if we get it wrong, we have a lot of castigation. I'm sure that many people in this room saw a recent South Today programme where a person who identified as black was searched. He said he was only searched because he was black. It got a lot of very, very adverse publicity. He was on there. Don John from Southampton was on there. The police got castigated. I only heard their side of it, and we didn't come out of it particularly well. But it just shows if we do it and we do it wrong, there are consequences. I'm very, very aware that stop and search is a vital tool in crime prevention. I just wonder how we're balancing the two needs.
Councillor, that's such a good question, and we look at this a lot. So I run a stop and search scrutiny panel through my office, and we dip test cases, every meeting, and it is, for me, it's a really tricky one, because if you are a young black person living in one of our, well, let's be one of our urban areas, Portsmouth, Hampton, Basingstoke, you know, Andover, maybe, you know, the chances are that you are, you may well have been stopped and searched, whereas your friends who are white may never have been. Now, there's two things to this, and this is the conversation I've had with the Chief Constable, is first of all, this is why police officers not moving every 5 minutes to different jobs and different locations is really important. Because if you know there is a young black lad that gets off the train in Basingstoke because he's been at Godalming College every day, and he gets off the train in Basingstoke and he walks through and then he gets on a bus, then he goes home, and you know you've stopped and searched him 3 or 4 times over the last 6 months, and every time he's been clean as a whistle and there's not been anything to see here. If you are a regular police officer that polices the beat in the town centre in Basingstoke around the train station, even though your intel logs might be telling you that drugs are being run into the county from southeast London, coming in through Basingstoke, and it is, you know, a couple of county lines being run by, and it's predominantly young black lads that are bringing the drugs and the knives, etc., into Hampshire, through Basingstoke train station, where they will get off, drop off to someone else, get back on the train and go. That person then gets on a train and goes somewhere else, and however the network works. You can only know that that is a good, honourable young man who's got off the train from college, who, you know, don't stop and search him. Where you don't have that continuity of police officers, you lose that a bit. And then that young lad ends up getting stopped, walking along with his white friend, let's say, could potentially be being stopped a lot more often because the intel is telling the police that what they're looking for is a particular, you know, person coming off the train or whatever. So, or, you know, category, you know, like, you know, young people fitting a certain description. So it is tricky, as you know, having been a Hampshire police officer, that you don't want to be targeting somebody because of the colour of their skin, because that is completely wrong. But if your intelligence is telling you that the people that are bringing the drugs into the county, for every 10 of them, 8 are black and 2 are white, your disposition is going to be to stop more black people, because that's what the intelligence is telling you, that they are the ones that are the most at risk of bringing drugs into the county, let's say. And I'm not saying I'm not sharing intelligence logs here, I'm talking hypothetically. There is a lot of work that's been done. Police officers get a lot of training and, as you know, and awareness, particularly those officers that are working in neighbourhoods and the DPT officers around the stop and search. But for me, knowing your beat, knowing who your young people are, knowing who's coming and going, that is key. Because I'd only have to spend a week sat outside a coffee shop in Basingstoke during rush hour or college kick-out time to start working out those kids are the ones that are coming and going every day. And if you know your beat, you know that. If you're a PCSO and you work in that area and that's your location, you know that. So for me, that local policing model of knowing your own geography and focusing on your area helps to avoid stigmatisation or you know, people being targeted just because of the colour of their skin. And I can understand why people get very upset, and a lot of work has been done. Actually, Councillor Bound knows about this. In Basingstoke, we've worked with lots of the different community leaders, and I'm thinking about Effie and other people in Basingstoke. Secondly, one other quick point is that the national stop and search information and the compliance with how many stop and searches are done where there are positive hits, if you want, whether it be drugs, knives, whatever, on people, we are one of the best forces in the country for that. And that information, I was reviewing it last week. I'm happy to share that with the panel if you're interested. But we do really, really well on that one. Whereas I think... can you remember what it was? It was, I don't want to quote the percentage because I don't want to get it wrong, but we were really high compared to our MSGs, our most similar group forces, of which we are one of about 8. But also nationally, we were doing really well as well. So I don't think we have a particular problem here, but that's not to say more than others, but we do still have problems, I should say, where, of course, this innocent people are going to get stopped and feel very victimised because it could be perhaps the colour of their skin, and that it's very upsetting that they feel that way.
Thank you, Donna. Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Donna. Mine's a sort of convoluted question, I suppose, to a certain extent. Is, you know, we had an excellent presentation today, which I found very helpful. We've got a police and crime plan going on in coming years, and my question is, do we know what's happening to it with regards to devolution? Probably a bit early, but I thought I'd ask the question.
Well, Kate and I have got a meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon with KPMG, which you guys will be much more aware of, those of you that are councillors, than I am, because they've been appointed by the districts and the county council and the unitaries to do some work. To be honest with you, I think from the conversations I'd heard last week, the KPMG work is done up to the point it needs to. So I suspect we thought they were meeting with us to. We're meeting with them with fire and colleges and like partners, basically, is our meeting we've got this afternoon. We assumed it was to get our thoughts on things, but I think largely they've formed a position already. So it may well be it's just an information sharing with us on what their report says. Devolution, well, I mean, at the moment, the office and I, which is obviously, I'm sure, the part that you're interested in, you know, how this affects police governance, is we are working on the assumption, although it's not confirmed yet, that both fire and police governance will be subsumed into the Mayor's office. I spoke to the Chief Fire Officer last Wednesday, Thursday, and we are both working on the same assumption there, and therefore Kate is leading the work on behalf of the OPCC and making sure that the OPCC is ready for what may well be coming. My anticipation, having spoken to other areas, and of course I already work with deputy mayors across the country who are the de facto police and crime commissioners, is that the OPCC staff, as is now, becomes effectively the deputy mayor's office, police, crime and fire. So the staff in my office would continue doing the jobs they're doing and the functions they're doing, and they would therefore then be reporting to a deputy mayor, police, crime and fire, as opposed to a directly elected police and crime commissioner. So I think, I'm hoping, from what we understand, that for the OPCC team, it will be minimal change. Fire governance may well become an expansion of the office. For the Chief Constable, he and I wrote to the Southampton leader, Portsmouth, Hampshire and Isle of Wight, and asked to meet with him, which we did. I think it was beginning of February, and we asked for a bit of an update on what's going on, because whilst the bid document went into the government, I think by the 16th of December or whenever it was, at some point the bid document's gone in, it included the governance of police and fire, but we'd not had any formal notification or sort of brief of that. So we were just asking, you know, for a bit more. I mean, I've been clearly having conversations personally with people behind the scenes, and then keeping the Chief Constable briefed as best I can. So the force and the OPCC are working through what that will mean for them come the 7th of May next year. And I anticipate you probably would know more than this, the councillors in the room will probably know more than this than I will, around when we are anticipating the government to come back and say what's in and what's out of the devolution negotiations. I mean, I'm assuming they're probably going to take the next 3-4 months to do, and then I should find out whether or not my role effectively goes next year in its current format, which is obviously as a directly elected person, which I'm 99% sure it will do. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Kate. No.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? No. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kate. So if members are happy, we'll go directly on to item 8, Police and Crime Panel Work Programme. We discussed this, I think, at the last meeting and approved it. Do members have any questions or observations they wanted to make on this? No? Okay, in that case, I make it 11:22. We shall end the meeting, and if we could ask for the webcast to be ended. Thank you, members.